Hello, BookTube. Today I'm going to be continuing my 2024 library tour with the beginning of the science fiction and fantasy section of my library. For 20 years, science fiction and fantasy was my favorite genre of fiction. Um, at the end of 2019, that changed. Although before then, I accumulated a large ish collection of science fiction and fantasy that one of my goals for this part of my library tour is to really get a handle on my science fiction and fantasy collection and decide how it's going to look in the future. Currently, my science fiction and fantasy are on two bookcases, one open-ended shelving unit, like if you watched my videos before I got the new bookcase in, was like that one. Although instead of one side being used, I'm using both sides as a bookcase. And then the bookcase that my brother built, which you will see in 9 videos from now. When I will start on my brother's bookcase. How exactly I'm going to film that, I don't know yet. Oh no, I have actually you'll see it sooner than that. How the camera is going to look over on that side. Anyway, so my goal with this part of the library is to determine what I want to keep and what I ultimately want to get rid of. My idea is to at least get rid of the my brother's bookcase. So I want to downsize at least to just this double-sided bookcase where we're going to begin. Although I did do a earlier version of this tour this weekend, and it went horribly, which is what I get for trying to do all of it at once and not one day at a time. But I have a sneaking suspicion that by the end of this, my science fiction fantasy collection might just be the headboard bookcase or one of the wall shelves. But we shall see. Anyway, let's get going to this first shelf. I have them in alphabetical order, so I'll start with A and end on Z in about 12 days or 12 episodes. Although at the end, there's going to be some scragglers uh, because they were books that I wanted to get rid of in my most recent purge, but I didn't have enough boxes for them. So they're going to be the first ones to go this time around. Anyway, let's get going. So first up is a book that I really shouldn't have, and that is Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. So Joe Abercrombie is or has been a major voice in the grimdark subgenre of science fiction and fantasy. Um, I about 15 years ago, I had the idea to dedicate my library to science fiction and fantasy, and everything else would be a small part, a bookcase or a shelf. Obviously, with the end of 2019 and my taste and my change in taste, that's no longer true. But before then, I did decide that I wanted to have a second shot at um, Abercrombie's most famous work, the first Law trilogy and the first book in that series, The Blade itself, which I had to go at about a year or so before I bought it and did not get on with it at all. It was like about a chapter or two before I bailed on it, but I picked it up anyway. Um, and then I got rid of it without actually giving it a Bell redemption. And I've had this book for about 6 or 7 years, and I've never gotten around to reading it. I really don't have any interest, so it really needs to go. Another book. So the next two books are by Daniel Abraham. They're a 2-volume bind up of the 4-volume Long Price Quartet. So the first volumes are A Shadow in Summer and A Betrayal in Winter, which look like this. And the second volume, sorry about the wobbling, but The Price of War, which includes an Autumn War and The Price of Spring. So I had a go at the first book years and years ago and didn't like it. I bailed within about a chapter. And I felt the need to give it a Bell Redemption, and I never did. So the next two books are, I think I picked it from the Friends of the Library section at the Westvaco Library. They have a little sell nook for the Friends of the Library, where they sell mass market paperbacks for the most part, or discarded library books for about 50 cents. So this is The Coming of the Horse Clans by Robert Adams. Don't know much about it. I've never gotten around to it. So it's definitely a candidate for purging. Shield by Paul Anderson. I don't know much about it. Again, candidate for purging. Although let's check and see when this came out, because it could also be candidate for Rocket July or Rocket Summer, 1963. So yeah, I could actually have a go at this for Rocket July. So the next 3 books are the Prince of Nothing series by R. Scott Baker. The first book is The Darkness That Comes Before, which I have read. So it's been about 15 years ago or more that I read this volume. Not this exact volume, because I checked it out from my library. So I read it and I didn't like it. I bailed within, I think, the prologue. And then I came back to it and read it, and the Bell Redemption was better, although I'm not entirely sure if I really liked it all that much better. But it was enough that I wanted to eventually pick up the entire trilogy, the first trilogy, and read it, which I never actually did. So this is The Darkness That Comes Before, book 1. And I don't think any of these editions are actually from the same publisher. So book 2 is The Warrior Prophet. And book 3 is The Thousandfold Thought. The next 3 books are by Iain M. Banks. First up is Consider Phlebas, the first of the Coulter novels. I've had several goes at this, and I just cannot get onto it. I do not like this one. I'm also not a fan of the second book in the series, even though it's not a proper series. It's standalone novels within a series, rather than like a sequential trilogy or longer series. So the second one is The Player of Games. And the book that really got me into Iain M. Banks' work in the Coulter series in general is Accession, which I bought in San Francisco and read it, I think actually on the plane ride back to Texas. And I loved it. So much so that I wanted to get the rest of the series, even though I don't particularly like the rest of the series as it turns out. And I've also never come back to it. It's been about 20 years? No. about going on 18 years since I read it, and I've never reread it. The next three books are by Clive Barker. First up is Imajica, which I picked up from the Cell Nook, because this is an ex-library copy. Never gotten around to it, so a candidate to go back. I also have Everville, which is also a library discard. I'm not entirely sure why this one does not have the protective binding that Imajica does, but oh well. Maybe they ran out of the plastic. This one I got from my cousin. This is the Books of Blood, volumes 1 to 3. Next up is The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. The first book in the Tide Child trilogy. Have not gotten around to it yet. This is probably one of the last new science fiction and fantasy books I bought. So I probably ought to do either a try chapter tag or think about purging the next purge. The next two books are by Bradley P. Bolio. The Song of the Shattered Sand series. I think it's, I don't know if it's a trilogy or it's longer than that. But anyway, this is 12 Kings of Sharakai. I recently did a try chapter tag of this book, and while it's a fairly good fight scene, I don't think I want to continue with it. And I'm not entirely sure why. While I have the trade paperback for the first book, I ended up buying the hardcover for book 2, with Blood Upon the Sand. So next is Masks by Issei Blake. I'm not entirely sure why I bought it or where I bought it from. Okay, I think maybe it was like Better World Books or one of the Owls books or something like that. Definitely candidate to purge. And finally, for this first shelf, Homunculus by James P. Blaylock, which I largely bought because of a bit of a joke. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a huge fan of Full Metal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa, which features a group of artificial humans called Homunculi as the main antagonistic faction. In the English dub of the two Full Metal Alchemist anime series, the character of King Bradley, who is Wrath in the manga and in the second anime, and in the first anime he is Pride. He is voiced in both adaptations by a voice actor named Ed Blaylock. And the joke is that, or the irony is that, a writer named James Blaylock wrote a novel about homunculi. But I haven't gotten around to reading it yet. So, anyway, that was the first shelf of my science fiction and fantasy. Hopefully, this was not too much of a downer. Because obviously, as I go through the shelves, it's probably going to be fairly depressing because a lot of these books I think I am going to be getting rid of in the next book purge or purges. So anyway, so I will be back tomorrow with probably the second part of science fiction and fantasy, and also a book haul, because I will be getting at least a book haul in tomorrow as well. So anyway, BookTube, until I see you tomorrow, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe. Oh, and also let me know how this looks, because it's like how the camera look, like is it too dark, is it okay, and also if because I'm thinking about naming these um, rather than part one or part two, but I might change my mind. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble and I need to go check and see who texted me. So until I see you tomorrow, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.